So opening remarks, we're going to start left to right, if that's okay with you. Mr. Stumbo.
All right, make sure we're on here. Thank y'all for coming out tonight. It is so good to be in the upstate, which is my home. Vanessa, my wife of 26 and a half years, who's here, raise your hand, Vanessa. We were raised in the upstate. We have raised our 4 children, 3 of which who are here tonight in the upstate. And a lot of our other family members are here as well, including some that live here in Pickens County. Chris and Jenny, thank y'all for coming, my uncle and aunt. One of the reasons I'm running for this seat, y'all, is I want to bring upstate values to Columbia. We need conservative, lifelong conservative values in Columbia, and we need a crime fighter. So if you don't remember anything else about me tonight, remember 2 things. One, I've been a crime-fighting prosecutor my entire career. I've worked with law enforcement all over the state, and we have fought crime and kept our families safe. And so we need that level of respect in Columbia. If you're going to be the chief prosecutor, as under our Constitution, the Attorney General is, you need to be a prosecutor. And so that's one. And secondly, I'm a lifelong conservative Republican, never wavered in our Republican conservative values. And so we can unpack that a little bit throughout the night on what those issues are that are important to these folks in the upstate. But thank you all for coming out and listening to us tonight. Just a little bit about my life history. I'm going to give you a little Cliff Notes version of that. I started my career at the Attorney General's office prosecuting internet crimes against children and sexually violent predator cases. They threw me in the deep end, gave me a bunch of cases, said go get them. We didn't have much of a training program like I'm sure Solicitor Pascoe and I have now in our offices. But one of the greatest things I was able to do is put pedophiles behind bars. And I can't remember cases that we had at that time where they didn't go to prison. And lately, I've seen far too many pedophiles walking out with probation. That's not going to happen when I'm your Attorney General. We're going to fight for prison time for every single one of these guys that want to hurt our kids. We're going to protect our kids. And we need to fight the cartels that are bringing dangerous, illegal drugs into our country. We had a massive fentanyl problem in this country that we're still fighting. We got to be tough. So we need a tough prosecutor in this position to fight the fentanyl problem that was taking so many of our young lives here in South Carolina. We need someone who is going to fight the battle on violent crime. We have shootings going on all over the state. That's become epidemic in our state, and you need a tough prosecutor that's going to fight those. Secondly, we need a conservative guy in this position that's been a lifelong conservative Republican who's pro-life, who's going to fight for election integrity, who's going to fight for the rights of parents to educate their kids like they want to fight for medical freedom, and to fight for your Second Amendment rights. And as your Attorney General, you're never going to have those rights and your constitutional liberties in doubt when I'm your AG in Columbia. Thank you all.
Mr. Pascoe, excuse me.
Close enough. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank Rick for putting this on. I want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight. I'm here with my better half, the woman you saw toting signs, Christy, in the back. She's also my driver and bodyguard, so beware. We have 4 sons. All of them are out of the house and off our payroll, at least for now. I'm running for Attorney General to be your top prosecutor. And when I'm your Attorney General, I'm going to concentrate on 4 things. Primarily 4 things. We're going to protect our children better. We're going to lower our crime rate. We're going to protect our sovereignty. And last but not least, we're going to fight corruption. First, protecting our children better. We are not just going to talk about going for the death penalty on child rapists when I'm Attorney General. We are going to seek the death penalty on child rapists because the crime is already on the books. As my friend David Stumbo pointed out also, I have a plan to increase the conviction rate drastically on child pornography cases. Our conviction rate right now is atrocious. And I have a plan I hope we get to talk about later where I'm going to raise that conviction rate. Lowering crime. We are going to lower crime by having a statewide policy to revoke bonds on offenders. 90% of the violent crimes in our communities is done by 10% of the felons. We are going to have a state policy that when someone is out on bond and commits a crime, we are going to revoke their bonds, put them in jail where they need to be, where they will stay until we get to their case for trial. Same with the illegal immigrants. If they're arrested, they're already here illegally, so we're going to move to revoke their bond statewide so ICE can decide whether they need to be picked up. Third, protect our state sovereignty. A prosecutor, the Attorney General, is the first line of defense against a woke Washington, D.C. or a liberal state trying to encroach on our sovereignty. And my administration is going to fight to make sure that that doesn't happen. And finally, last but not least, we are going to fight corruption. An Attorney General's duty is to be where corruption needs an adversary. And that's where you're going to find me. I was a state house prosecutor that took down 5 of the most powerful legislators in the state house. I wanted to go further, but the Supreme Court told me I had to stop because they said, you're not the Attorney General. So I'm running for Attorney General to finish the job I started. Because corruption in Columbia is just as bad or worse today than it was when I was your state house, when I was your special prosecutor during the state house corruption probe. And let me tell you this, when I am the Attorney General, South Carolina, with regards to transparency and locking up corrupt legislators and councilmen and public officials, South Carolina is going to start doing the right thing. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Goldfinch.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. I appreciate y'all who have put this on. It takes a lot of work, so thank you so much. In 2004, I was graduating from the Citadel. I had plans to go into the Navy. I ended up having a stroke underwater and was not able to take my Navy commission. The Army eventually took me because the Army will take anybody. Even with, I like to tell my kids I have Dane Bramage. My wife would tell you I still have Dane Bramage because I'm in politics. But anyway, I started, after I graduated from Citadel, I had a biochemistry degree, and I started a biotech company in Charleston. And we did umbilical cord blood stem cell banking. Y'all know what I'm talking about when I say that? The umbilical cord is cut off of a baby at birth, and it's usually disposed of. We extracted the umbilical cord blood stem cells, and we're one of the first in the nation to cryogenically freeze those umbilical cord blood stem cells for future therapeutic use. God forbid a child was to come down with leukemia or lymphoma or something. And y'all, that company went gangbusters. It went very, very well. But for the federal government, who was in my way every single step of the way. They were not there as a stepping stone. They were there as a stumbling block. They were not there to help build wealth. They were there to destroy wealth. Despite that, in 2006, we were blessed enough to sell that company. Started a second company. Same problem. The federal government was in my way every step of the way. I eventually decided I had to have a lawyer in my pocket 24/7 in order to just live the American dream, to be an entrepreneur. So what did I do? I went to law school. Bad idea, by the way, okay? Don't go represent yourself. That's never a good idea. But that's what I did. Eventually, we were blessed enough to sell the second company, and I started a law practice. And I didn't really ever intend on having a law practice, y'all. I wanted to represent myself, but that's what life gave me. My very first case was a gentleman who was building a dock in Murrells Inlet and a house. He was just a realtor and a builder, built a couple of houses a year, and he was exactly in the same situation that I had been in just a few years ago. The government came to him and said, cease and desist. They found a 50-year-old unpermitted bulkhead buried in the mud, and they said, cease and desist. 9 months that guy started working, had been working on this problem, and he finally came to me and he said, the government's breaking me. That's when I knew I was going to get in the business of suing the government. And that is exactly what my law practice has been ever since I graduated from law school. I sue the government on behalf of the people of South Carolina. That is my law practice. Now, I didn't tell you about my military career. I am a veteran. I am a prosecutor. I've prosecuted literally hundreds, if not thousands, of cases. I've seen the worst of the worst. I've also been a businessman. I've also been a legislator. I was blessed enough to be elected to the South Carolina House of Representatives and to the South Carolina Senate in 2016. I've been in the Republican caucus. I've been a conservative my entire life. And I'm proud of that. And I can start this job, y'all, on day one running. And I would appreciate your vote on June 9th. Thank you.
All I cannot even cross my arms and look sternly at you without creating some sort of a feedback. You guys hear that? Yeah, look at that. I don't even know what's going on with that. Okay, so this question originates from Mr. Stumbo. We're going to start with Mr. Pascoe. The question is, voters often look at past votes to understand a candidate's principles. Who did each of you vote for in the 2020 and 2024 presidential primary?
That's too easy, Donald Trump. I hate to break it to my opponents and to the people on the right. I could put my hand on a Bible and say that I've never voted for a Democrat for president. So that was easy. Thank you.
What are we going to do with all that spare time, Bonnie?
Donald Trump.
Mr. Goldfinch.
Donald Trump.
You want to qualify that? Why you did?
I don't need to qualify it.
Both
I voted for Donald Trump.
Both of them, right? Okay.
Donald Trump, and then before that, Donald Trump, and I would vote for Donald Trump.
I voted in the 2024 Republican primary.
Right.
Presidential, also for Donald Trump.
I told you guys we were going to come in ahead of time. Mr. Stumbo, who'd you vote for?
I voted for Donald Trump both times, and the reason is he's the greatest president in my lifetime, other than maybe Ronald Reagan is right there with him. But there's no doubt my family and I have supported Donald Trump. I'm sorry, I don't have a microphone. Every time he's run for office, and the reason for that is he's been a game changer for our country, and I proudly support him again. And I not only have supported him and voted for him, we haven't promoted any other candidates in the races in 2020 and 2024.
Thank you, sir. This question comes from Mr. Pascoe. So, Mr. Goldfinch, you're going to get it first. What is the most important job for our next Attorney General?
Putting bad guys in jail, it certainly is, I think there's probably, the answer to that is probably twofold. It depends on whether or not we have, God forbid, a Kamala Harris or a Gavin Newsom in office in 2028. In that case, y'all, I think the importance of the Attorney General's office becomes, let's just say it's even more important to have an Attorney General that knows administrative and the civil divisions of that office as opposed to the criminal divisions. If we God help us, we end up with, another great Republican in the president's office in 2028, then yeah, I think criminal justice is exactly where our focus needs to be. But again, Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom in 2028, we have to have an Attorney General that's ready, willing, and able to go to the Supreme Court of the United States and defend our state's sovereignty, our federalism, our 10th Amendment constitutional conservative rights that we have established right here in South Carolina. And y'all, they'll take them from us if we don't stop them.
Mr. Stumbo.
We're going to protect our kids first and foremost. That Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, in which I was the first prosecutor in that unit and was privileged to have the opportunity to prosecute the first 2 cases we ever had in the history of the state to a jury with these guys that were getting in chat rooms and meeting who they thought were young girls. They'd show up and it was an undercover police officer. We started that unit at the time I was there, got convictions, and we're going to do that today, protect our kids. But secondly, on the civil part and public policy, again, when our legislature passes good legislation like the heartbeat bill, and hopefully we'll even make a more stringent abortion law and get it through the General Assembly, you've got to have an Attorney General that's been pro-life his entire life and is going to defend those principles. So we have to, on public policy issue, hold the line and be an ally for Donald Trump here in South Carolina, which I plan to be his greatest ally as your Attorney General. And if we have, God forbid, a Democrat elected in 2028, you better have an Attorney General who's going to fight back. Because I promise you, just like during the Biden years and the Obama years, they are going to try to overreach into South Carolina, impose horrific stuff on our quality of life in South Carolina. And you need a staunch Republican, lifelong conservative in that office to fight back.
Mr. Pascoe.
Children and corruption. We have got to do a better job of protecting our children in this state. There are some counties that have a single-digit conviction rate on child pornography. And with all due respect, the Internet Crimes Division in the Attorney General's office has done a dismal job in its 15-plus years of existence. Go look at the prosecutions that they've done. I have a plan to take that state money, give it back to the local solicitors, and let them prosecute those cases, and you can hold your elected solicitor responsible if they have a single-digit conviction rate. We have got to protect our children better. We also have to have a statewide program, a conservative program, that puts youth in churches before we put them in DJJ for petty crimes where they learn to be better criminals. And second, corruption. The Attorney General's duty, I'm going to say it again, is to be where corruption needs an adversary. We've just a year ago had a state senator stand up on the Senate floor, it's embarrassing, and say, do you know, Mr. President, that I've been offered between $50,000 and $100,000 in campaign money if I'd vote against tort reform? Is there anybody in this room that doesn't think that's evidence of a crime? Even the people on the right side. Everybody knows that's evidence of a crime. And nobody wants to talk about it, and nobody wants to investigate it. Well, good old boys, guess what? David Pascoe is going to be the next Attorney General. And when I'm the Attorney General, I'm going to investigate it. Things are going to change when I'm the Attorney General for South Carolina, and the good old boys know it. And that's why they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every single day in dark money against me. Things are going to come to a change. Those are the two things that we have got to do. We got to take care of our children, and we got to wipe out the corruption in this state, because that corruption in Columbia trickles down to every single municipality and government agency, county agency in this state, to the point where they blow off our Freedom of Information Act requests, don't they? And nothing can be done about it. Well, when I'm your Attorney General, I'm going to sue on your behalf, and I'm going to get those documents. As you can see, I'm not running for Attorney General to run for the position. I want to rise to the occasion. I'm not running for Attorney General to make friends. I'm running to serve you. Thank you.
So, Mr. Goldfinch, just so you know, I'm going to hold your first question to the last round because it's sort of specific, but the next question is from Mr. Goldfinch, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Stumbo.
Sure.
Given the well-reported history each of you has on this, tell us what you truly think of Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Joe Biden's one of the worst, most corrupt presidents we've ever had, y'all. Look, I mean, the stuff that was going on with the Burisma scandal, the 10% for the big guy. I mean, y'all saw it all. Horrible presidency. Never once would support Joe Biden and never will. Donald Trump, like I've already said, my feelings on him is, look, do I agree with every single thing that Donald Trump says or does? No, but he's been one of the greatest presidents we've had because he's tough. And we have a greater standing in the world today because of Donald Trump. We're respected again. We were a laughingstock and a joke during the Biden years. And as soon as President Trump came in, we shut the border down. So fentanyl stopped flowing across. We were seeing it in our cases and all over the state of South Carolina. The supply of fentanyl was unbelievable because of Biden's open border policies. And so when Donald Trump comes in, he shuts the border down, and so then the cartels start running it on boats through the Caribbean. What did Donald Trump do? He ordered strikes on those boats and blew them up because that stuff was coming into our country to kill our citizens. It was an act of war. And so absolutely 100%, the moves that Donald Trump are making us stronger in the world today, and it's allowing us as a law and order partner to fight crime on the streets and in our courtrooms better. So that's how I feel about those two presidents.
Mr. Pascoe.
Thank you. I agree with everything David Stumbo said about Donald Trump. And I'm going to take it even one step further. If David had enough time, he would have said this too. When Joe Biden uses AutoPen to commute the sentences of the 37 most violent, evil human beings that have ever walked the face of the earth, can you imagine being a family in Conway, not far from Mr. Goldfinch, and being told 2 days before Christmas that your daughter's murderer is having their sentence commuted by the President of the United States? And he was supposed to be the person with all the empathy. There was no empathy there. So I agree with everything. I'll cut the Trump. But my point is Donald Trump has worked with state prosecutors across this country so we can go after those people, including Brandon Council in Horry County, for the death penalty. And his DOJ needs to be applauded for that as well. Joe Biden. I've known Joe Biden for almost 20 years. I did think Joe Biden was a friend of mine. And I thought Joe Biden would tell me the truth. But he lied. And I left him when he picked Kamala Harris as his vice president. And I left him when all this stuff, I really started reading on Burisma and everything else. And I'm going to tell you a short story that very few people have heard about. Sometime after Labor Day, the Democratic Party, the Biden campaign in 2020, asked me to campaign for Joe Biden. And they said, you can go to Virginia or Florida, Pascoe, wherever you want to go. Pick one. And I said, I'm not going to campaign for him. I'm not going to vote for him. And they asked me, what are you talking about? I said, he lied to me, and he picked a progressive prosecutor, Kamala Harris, as his vice president. And then I went one step, maybe a little bit too far. I said, and you're lucky that I'm not the Attorney General of the United States. Because if I was Bill Barr, there would be Bidens in prison. See, that's who I am. I'm not a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm a wolf in wolf's clothing. I loathe corruption. I don't care if you are my friend or my enemy. If you are corrupt, I will leave you in a heartbeat, and I will take you on. So that's how I feel about both Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Mr. Goldfinch.
Under Joe Biden, the agency state, which we haven't talked about yet, the agency state increased threefold under Joe Biden. Y'all, that is an abomination. It is an embarrassment, but it's also detrimental to the businesses and the people and your neighbors and your friends and my constituents that live in South Carolina. They are business people, most of them small business people that are just trying to earn a living. They're entrepreneurs, just trying to live the American dream, and the agency state is crushing them, literally crushing them. My entire adult career as a lawyer, as a House member, and as a senator, I have been fighting the agency state. You cannot ask a person in Columbia about my record that will not tell you that I am the anti-agency, anti-bureaucrat guy. And Joe Biden, single-handedly, actually, I don't believe Joe Biden did it. I think Joe Biden was asleep the entire time. Joe Biden's people did it. Increased the agency state by threefold. And y'all, that is unacceptable. And I'm telling you, we wind up with a Gavin Newsom or a Kamala Harris in 2028, we're going to have the same problem again. And you got to have an attorney general that knows what he or she is doing, knows how to fight the government, knows the administrative and the civil division well enough to go and fight the agency state. Donald Trump, as both of these guys have said, absolutely effective, right? You can't give him a better word than effective. You might not like the way he talks. You might not even like some of the things that he says. But at the end of the day, the man knows how to get things done, and that's a great change of pace for America, in my opinion. Thank you.
This question is from Mr. Stumbo to you, Mr. Pascoe. Endorsements from sheriffs and solicitors aren't just numbers. They represent the trust of people who enforce the law every day. How many sitting sheriffs have publicly endorsed your campaign, and why?
I don't know. I think 1 to 3, and I'll tell you why. I have not called one sheriff or one legislator, save some freedom caucusers, because they have stood by me for judicial reform and anti-corruption laws. I have not asked one sheriff for an endorsement, not one legislator for an endorsement, because that's what good old boys do. I don't need the approbation of elected officials. And remember, 16 sheriffs have been indicted in the last 15 years. And I know how rotten it is up in Columbia with legislators. I don't want the endorsements of elected officials. I want your endorsement. I'm not going to go work for elected officials. I'm going to go work for the people of this state. So to answer your question as directly as I can, I know there have been some sheriffs that have endorsed me. I can think of 2 or 3, but I did not ask them for their endorsements. I don't even think I've thanked 2 of them, which I need to do because that's rude, and I'm going to do that. But I'm not asking for anyone's endorsement. Thank you.
Mr. Goldfinch, do you need me to repeat that?
How many sheriffs have endorsed me?
How many sheriffs and solicitors have endorsed you, and why?
I think we're at 9 sheriffs. I'll have to 10, 11. We're at 11 sheriffs. I'm not sure on solicitors. I'd have to look. I know that my own solicitor has endorsed us, Jimmy Richardson, but I'd have to check on solicitors. Quite frankly, the solicitor caucus, for lack of a better term, is they're these guys are a brotherhood. And so, you know, I haven't been chasing solicitors because I expect both of them to pick them all up. They've been friendly with each other for years, and that's great. That's fine. But I think we're at 11 sheriffs is what the team in the back is telling me, and maybe 1 or 2 solicitors.
Do you want to answer why? Any particular, do you know the why part of it? Why do they endorse you?
Why did the sheriffs endorse me?
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, I think what I've told you in the beginning, in my opening statement, is exactly what I've told every sheriff I've met with. And I think I've met with pretty much every sheriff in South Carolina.
Right.
And that is, ladies and gentlemen, we can all prosecute crime. I have been a prosecutor. They've been prosecutors. By the way, I think I'm the only veteran, and that has resonated with quite a few sheriffs that are also veterans. We can all prosecute crimes. There's a big criminal division at the Attorney General's office. But there's only one of us that has experience in the agency state, suing the agency state, fighting the giant bureaucracy that is Washington, D.C., and Columbia, by the way, and that's me. So sheriffs do, by and large, care about criminal justice. Absolutely. That is first priority for them. But you got to know there's a multi-dimensional Attorney General's office sitting in Columbia, and it's not just prosecuting cases. There's a lot more to it than just that, and sheriffs appreciate that.
Mr. Stumbo.
I have 18 sheriffs endorsing me and 5 solicitors, including in the sheriffs, your sheriff here in Pickens County, Tommy Blankenship, great guy, doing a wonderful job. Your neighboring sheriffs in Hobart Lewis and Greenville, and Mike Crenshaw in Oconee, and also Chad McBride down in Anderson. All those guys are the 4 of the 18. We have them all the way down to the Low Country, P.J. Tanner and Beaufort, all the way over to the PD in Darlington and Marion counties. And y'all, of the solicitors, one of the guys that worked for me for 12 years is now the 10th Circuit Solicitor in Oconee and Anderson, Micah Black. Thank you for being here. And y'all, there's a reason why the sheriffs are endorsing me. And in fact, I talked to Sheriff McBride just the other day, and Sheriff McBride said when Micah ran for office, he knew coming out of the 8th Circuit that he was going to be a tough prosecutor, that he was going to fight crime, that he was going to keep families safe. And Sheriff McBride told me the other day, and Sheriff Crenshaw have both told me, his sheriffs, that Micah's doing every single thing he promised he'd do on the campaign trail. And he learned that in our office from law school. He came to our office for 12 years, worked in our office. We laid the example of fighting crime and being tough in the courtroom and working shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement, because we can't do our jobs if we don't have a good relationship with them. And I've seen circuits around the state where there's a problem between prosecutors and the solicitor's office, or in the sheriff's departments and police departments, and it's a disaster. And we changed the culture in the 8th Circuit. The reason why I'm the 8th Circuit solicitor today is in 2011, I had 2 sheriffs and a police chief in the 8th Circuit who are all retired now, but they came to me and said, David, our solicitor's not trying cases and we got issues. And they asked me to run for solicitor, so I left a good job in Columbia at the statewide grand jury where we were prosecuting a bunch of high-level public corruption and drug trafficking cases at the state grand jury, and we moved home. Vanessa and I moved back to our home to run for solicitor. So the reason I'm the solicitor today is because of law enforcement and their backing. That's why they trust me to get the job done as the Attorney General, and why we have overwhelmingly the largest number of sheriffs and solicitors endorsing me in this race.
Bill, I gave you an incomplete answer too. I apologize. I've got at least 8 former solicitors and solicitors who've told me they're endorsing me. I just haven't bothered to put it out yet again because I did not ask for their endorsement. But maybe in the near future we'll put those out.
And just to qualify, I've got a big list of retired sheriffs and solicitors that are also endorsing us. I didn't add those in those numbers.
This question originates from Mr. Pascoe to you, Mr. Goldfinch. What are your feelings about the death penalty?
What are my feelings about it?
Verbatim.
We need the death penalty.
Okay.
I mean, there's no quibbling. There's unequivocally, we need the death penalty. I mean, is there further question than that? That's it?
We can just keep on moving on. Mr. Stumbo.
100% in favor of the death penalty. We've sought it 4 times in my circuit in the last 14 years since I've been the solicitor. And in fact, one of those is going to trial in August, so I'm jumping right from a primary into death penalty case in August. So that's going to be a busy summer for us. We also have a guy on death row out of Abbeville County named Stephen Bixby. He killed 2 deputies, a deputy and a constable in Abbeville back in 2003, and is still on death row. Can you all believe that? We just had hearings in Greenville this year. The judge that was assigned was from up here, Judge Sprouse, and he had to hear from these crazy motions from defense attorneys that get unlimited resources that said he was not competent to be executed. And this was a guy that was making constitutional arguments to the judge over the objection of his own lawyers. It was absolutely ridiculous. He's one of the next to be executed. I was in the courtroom, and I worked on those briefs with the Attorney General, and hopefully I'll be there the night he's executed. We're hoping it's going to be this year.
Mr. Pascoe.
And obviously, I'm for the death penalty. I was the first public official to call for the firing squad in South Carolina many years ago. People laughed at me, Republicans and Democrats. I work on both sides of the aisle and helped get that passed in the legislature. And I'm the only candidate who's put people on death row. I put a couple of people on there, including a cop killer who went before the firing squad last spring, the very firing squad that I called for. He was a cop killer, and he got justice, finally. One of the things I want to make sure that we do when I'm the Attorney General is that we train all the solicitors' offices in how to try death penalties, and we provide them with prosecutors if they need them to do that. Because what I've seen is a lot of solicitors, particularly in the last decade, that have dropped the death penalty when it didn't need to be dropped. I mean, when you rape and murder a 2-year-old boy, you deserve the death penalty. Cop killers deserve the death penalty. And I just want to make sure that every solicitor's office in this state is prepared and knows how to try them, because death penalty trials are different. That's the slogan, death is different. And I'm going to make sure that we do that when I'm your Attorney General.
This next question originates from Mr. Goldfinch, coming to you, Mr. Stumbo. All of you have extensive experience in the criminal justice system, but comparatively limited backgrounds in the civil and administrative divisions. Yet those areas make up a significant portion of the Attorney General's responsibilities. How would you effectively oversee and execute those functions without direct experience in these fields?
When I worked in the Attorney General's office, our criminal cases often overlapped with civil cases. One of them, I don't know if y'all remember the James Brown case with his estate, which was still kind of out there in the charitable trust that his estate had. It hit a lot of the news. When I was in the Attorney General's office, I oversaw a prosecution in Barnwell County against a guy that was a former accountant that was stealing money out of the trust. And also, we were overlapping with the civil division that was handling the charitable trust case, Sonny Jones and the guys in that division. When I was at the Attorney General's office the first time in law school, I worked with Bob Cook on a religious liberty case. And so I know Bob Cook. He's still he's the Solicitor General and over the Opinions Division today. I worked for him for a year and a half. We had a case where a Wiccan priestess in Great Falls, South Carolina, was suing the town because they were praying in Jesus' name to start their meetings. And of course, the lawsuit was all over as this establishment, separation of church and state, which of course it was not. It was free exercise. The woke left forgets that part. So that was a great case I was able to be involved in that division too. So I'm the only one on this stage who has had extensive experience actually working in the Attorney General's office. And most of that has been fighting crime in that office, but also I've worked in other areas. I don't talk about that a lot on the campaign trail, but I know every division of that office because I've worked there. I know the people of that office, and those people of that office overwhelmingly want me to be their next Attorney General. So that's the answer. I'll be ready on day one to lead both the civil and criminal and public policy government sections of that office.
Mr. Pascoe, do you need me to repeat that?
No, I got it. Stephen, was that your question? Okay, well, you've been sued as many times as me and David Stumbo. You know a little something about how to handle civil cases. When you're a solicitor, we get sued by inmates every single day. But in all seriousness, I'm a trial lawyer, and I know I can go in there and try a civil case as fast as I can try a criminal case. And just like my friend David Stumbo, I worked at the Attorney General's office for a year, and I know every division there. Let me tell you what I'm going to do with the civil division when I'm the Attorney General. We have lawyer legislators that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in some cases, millions of dollars, on litigation retention agreements, which are AG civil cases. When I am your Attorney General, on day one, I'm going to fire every lawyer legislator from those contracts. Because they get hired by the Attorney General, they can be fired by the Attorney General. And I'm going to make sure, when I'm your Attorney General, that we are not going to have public officials making money off of their positions. That is the first thing I'm going to do. Then I'm going to make sure that those civil cases are farmed out to law firms that actually know how to try cases and are actually the ones who bring the bid. But most importantly, why are we even farming most of these cases out to these law firms? So when you have a $350 million opioid settlement, why should $50 million go to law firms? When I'm Attorney General, we're going to keep that in-house. And most of that $50 million is going to go to the people of South Carolina. I am very familiar with the Civil Division of the Attorney General's office, and I am going to totally revamp it when I'm the Attorney General to make sure they are working for you and not for Merle Smith, Bruce Bannister, Randy Lowell, and a handful of other lawyers in South Carolina. How you like that?
Mr. Goldfinch.
Well, as I've told you, the vast majority, if not all of my law practice since the beginning has been in this division. This is exactly what I do. I sue the government for a living. I am the anti-agency state guy. I sue bureaucrats. I always ask a bureaucrat exactly the same question if you depose them or put them on the stand, and y'all, that question is this: what is it that gave you the authority to ruin this person's life? Whatever it might be, deny the permit, you name it. What is it that gave you the authority to ruin this person's life? As the government. And y'all, the answer is always the same. And here it is. That's the way we've always done it. Y'all, that's the wrong answer. Let me tell you what the right answer is. The right answer is only either statute or regulation. And most of the time the regulation is wrong because the regulation doesn't comport with the statute, with the law. Y'all, you've got to have an attorney general that knows how to fight the agency state. That is what's crushing the backbone of America. Yes, we can all prosecute cases. We can talk about that till we're blue in the face. But I am the only one that's actually done the administrative and the civil law division. I am the only one that's ever actually fought the bureaucracies that we all know and all hate. That has been my life from my entire adult career. And I'd love to do it at the Attorney General's office. That is what I get up in the morning thinking about and go to bed at night thinking about and dream about is fighting bureaucracies. Yes, I'm a nerd. I'm sorry. But that is what I think about all day long, fighting bureaucracies. I hate the agency state. That is the deep state, y'all. You heard of the deep state? Right? Depending on where you are, what county you are in South Carolina, you say deep state and you see eyes roll. Okay, the deep state is real. It is the agency state. The deep state is the folks that are there, the bureaucrats that are there. They're there before I was elected. They're there now, and they're going to be there long after I'm gone. And they're the ones making decisions for your life. They're the ones in cubicle 236, somewhere in Bethesda, Maryland. She's got dreadlocks. She's wearing patchouli oil, okay? And she's making decisions for your life, for your lives, for your neighbors, for your friends. She's crushing the American backbone, the entrepreneur. I'm the only one that's ever fought that system, and I can do it for you, and I can do it really well, y'all.
This question from Mr. Stumbo, going to you, Mr. Pascoe. Can you demonstrate support for the pro-life position on abortion during your adult life? And have you ever supported a candidate for state or federal office who was not pro-life?
I'm glad I thought it was my question to Stumbo, but am I pro?
It's
I got it. No,
by Mr. Stumbo for you, Mr.
Yes.
Pascoe.
Lifelong pro-life. Even wrote articles about it in law school. I've been a pro-lifer since I was probably 13 years old in parochial. So yeah, I don't know why you're frowning at me, since that's how I was brought up. Sorry, I know you don't like the answers, but I'm lifelong pro-life. I've always believed that life begins at conception. That is why I've been prosecuting people for 30 years, women who ingest drugs when they're pregnant. I've done that. I'm not sure anybody else can say that on the stage. That is why I prosecuted men who harmed the unborn. I've done that as a prosecutor. I have never, to my knowledge, supported a candidate who was pro-choice. But I don't want to put my hand on a Bible and say that, because I really don't. I know that I've never voted for a candidate who was pro-choice. I know that 100%. And that's just, that's what I believe in. And when the heartbeat bill passed, I was extremely pleased with that. So, thank you.
Mr. Goldfinch, do you need me to repeat that for you?
Are you saying Joe Biden was not pro-choice?
I didn't vote for Joe Biden.
You never voted for Joe Biden?
Not even in the 2020 presidential
But you
primary,
knocked
my
on
friend.
doors for him and called him the
I
best man
never
you've ever
knocked
known.
on doors for Joe Biden. I hate to tell you all this,
He was
guys.
your friend.
But I can put, yeah,
You knocked
I
on
thought
doors.
he was. I
So
did
normally,
not knock
Mr.
on doors.
Goldfinch, if you want to address
I'll
him,
answer that.
then he'll get a
Now, you
3-minute
have voted for
rebuttal.
pro-choice judges, Stevie. Why don't you tell the world about the pro-choice judges you voted for?
We'll stick with the time format, thank you.
I'm a 100% pro-choice. I actually have a record on pro-choice. You can look it up, 100, and I expect, by the way, y'all, I expect to be endorsed by the pro-choice organizations because I've got a 100% pro-choice voting record. I voted for personhood, I voted for heartbeat, I voted for dismemberment, and you can go back farther than that. I went all the way back to 2012. I voted for every pro-life bill that we've had, and I have fought the anti-pro-life amendments every single step of the way.
Just not judge.
You mean judge?
James Smith,
Name.
This time goes to Mr. Stumbo.
All right,
Mr.
can I
Stumbo,
talk?
you got it?
Okay. Look, y'all, the proof's in the pudding, not just in voting records. It's how have you spent your time in your life? How have you spent your money, your resources, the things you care about? And Vanessa and I have been working in crisis pregnancy centers since early in our marriage. I remember nights waking up with Vanessa talking, because we used to be on the hotline when we had one of those landlines that would roll over to our house once every couple of weeks. And I remember Vanessa talking to a young girl who was in a crisis pregnancy multiple times, where she would tell her, God loves you, God loves your baby, and has a plan for your life. Please don't do this. And I was on the board of the Crisis Pregnancy Center. We put 40 ultrasounds in every location in Columbia and Lexington. And the reason is we wanted these girls to be able to see their babies. And so not only have we put our time and our money, our entire adult life into the pro-life movement, I remember praying on the steps of the Supreme Court. Richard Cash told this story in Anderson the other night because he was with me. He was an eyewitness to it. I was with Richard Cash in college. This is 30 years ago, praying that Roe v. Wade would be overturned on the steps of the Supreme Court. Thank God it has been, because President Trump put in pro-life Supreme Court justices. That wouldn't have happened with Joe Biden. If he were in 2016, or Hillary Clinton, you think she would have put pro-life justices on the bench? No way. And so that's why elections matter. But look, y'all, the bottom line is voting record. It is a threshold issue for our marriage. We will never vote for a candidate who is for the killing of unborn babies. Full stop. Never have promoted a candidate, never have raised money for a candidate, never have knocked doors for a candidate, never have said nice things about a candidate who is for the unborn killing of children, period. And so when you have an attorney general that has to go fight on pro-life legislation that our legislature passes, you better have an attorney general that's been there in the pro-life movement from day one. So that's my position on pro-life, and we have proved it over the years by not only what we do in our personal lives, but the way we voted in our public positions on these cases. And I have prosecuted women who have ingested drugs and harmed their babies too. I've had plenty of those cases.
This question from Mr. Pascoe, going to you, Mr. Goldfinch. Would you still have filed to run for Attorney General if the current occupant, Alan Wilson, had filed for re-election? Please explain your answer.
No, I wouldn't. I think he's done a pretty good job.
You just can't beat the economy of that, can you? Mr. Stumbo.
If he had decided to run for re-election, if Alan had decided to run for re-election, would I have run against him?
Would you have filed? Yes, sir.
No, because I don't think any of us on this stage would have had a chance to beat him. Over the past 16 years, there's a reason why he hasn't had much opposition. And I believe Mr. Pascoe even had some aspirations to run in 2010, had an AG account. But y'all, Allen would not have lost if he had run again in 2026. So it would have been a fool's errand for anybody to try to run against Allen if he had run for reelection this year. But now that it's an open seat, I believe I have the vision and the background to be the new Attorney General.
Mr. Pascoe.
Yes, I would have run against him and I would have crushed him. I would have crushed him. Because of his conviction rate on child pornography, because he's never really been in a courtroom. We're going to find out what happened in the one case he was in a courtroom on it, but most importantly, because of corruption. And I like Alan Wilson personally a lot. I really do. Some people don't want to hear that, but I like him a lot. But it's not personal, it's professional. And remember, he was the one who I had to fight with the most during the State House corruption probe. He was the one who tried to have me removed from the probe so I couldn't go after corrupt legislators. I had to sue him in the Supreme Court, and I won. And because of that, I was able to take down the Speaker of the House. Well, actually, I would have taken him down anyway, but the President pro tem of the Senate, 2 majority leaders, the Judiciary Chairman. I was able to issue a grand jury report outlining the corruption in this state. So unequivocally, yes, I was going to run against Alan Wilson even if he had filed for Attorney General. Not personal, but professional, because we got to do a better job of protecting our children, and we got to do something about corruption in Columbia. We have to do something about these municipalities and these counties that don't abide by our sunshine laws and by the Freedom of Information Act. We need to have more transparency in our state so we don't end up with a Minnesota problem with Somali daycare centers. Because that's exactly what we're going to get in South Carolina if we're not careful and we don't have an Attorney General that's willing to enforce our FOIA laws and an Attorney General who's willing to fight. So yes, I would have run for Attorney General.
All right, because of this is somewhat specific, so this is going from Mr. Goldfinch. We're going to start with you, Mr. Pascoe. So the question is, in December 2023, David Pascoe said, a major reason I'm personally calling for judicial reform is because of the lack of diversity on the bench. Look at what the current process has got in our state. We currently have no women on our Supreme Court, and come this July, we will have no person of color. It is insanity for anyone not to support reform for the good of our state. Do you stand by this statement, and will you incorporate that same belief into your hiring practices at the Attorney General's office?
Stand by it, baby, because this is what that quote was about. I was mocking the Black Caucus, and I was mocking his friends in the legislature. I supported a black candidate who was a conservative prosecutor. I supported another black candidate who was a conservative prosecutor. They voted for one at least admitted with the JMSC that she voted for Donald Trump. They were conservatives. I supported them and asked he and his brethren to support them. And they didn't. But not only did the Republicans not support them, the rhinos in the State House, the Black Caucus didn't support the black candidates. So, Bill, when I made that comment, I was mocking the Black Caucus, saying, I guess, well, David Pascoe is the only person who cares about diversity in the bench because I backed 2 black candidates and they didn't back one. Here's the deal. They try to say I'm DEI. Yeah, I'm DEI. If you are conservative, I think that we need more of you on the bench, and that's who I'm going to support to put on the bench. It is a complete lie when they say that Pascoe supports DEI judges. David Pascoe supports conservative judges, especially, and I know David Stumbo is the same way, especially former prosecutors. But guess who doesn't support conservative judges? Guess who supports DEI judges? The guy who asked me that question. He should explain why he voted for pro-choice, pro-Planned Parenthood endorsed James Smith. He should explain why he voted for Senator Marlin Kempson's brother. I mean, you talk about cronyism, instead of the conservative former prosecutor from Berkeley County that I supported for judge. I don't support DEI judges, but I think a certain state senator does. Thank you.
Mr. Goldfinch, all I'm going to ask you out of this question is, would you incorporate that same belief into your hiring practices at the Attorney General's office?
Incorporate DEI into the Attorney General's office? The answer is no, I would not. It should be a merit-based system, as everything should. And by the way, I find all of that to be real rich coming from a guy who literally endorsed Joe Biden, okay? And by the way, the same guy that says, no, y'all are reading that all wrong about what I said about DEI is the same guy that just told you to your face Joe Biden was his friend. Joe Biden was a guy that he literally said was one of the best men I ever knew, my children's role model, and he just told you to his face, to your face, that he never voted for the guy.
No offense, Mr. Goldfinch, but you've given the same answer twice.
I've given the same answer twice?
Yes, you have. I mean, I understand if you want to bang heads and everything else.
I
was just asking about the DEI part of it.
Yeah, the DEI part of it, I would not incorporate DEI into the Attorney General's office. Everything and anything needs to be merit-based, not based on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is liberal, woke, progressive nonsense.
Mr. Stumbo.
I don't know if y'all watched the president's inaugural address, but he literally used the word meritocracy. We're going to institute a meritocracy in this country again, to where it's not about the color of your skin or these crazy beliefs you have in sexual orientation beliefs and cross-dressing and sexual changing sexes, all that stuff. That's crazy. What we need to base is on merit. And so when we're choosing judges, whether it's judges at the State House, whether it's hiring practices at the Attorney General's office, we need to be looking at the quality of the judge. And I've always supported conservative judges. Those are the only ones I've ever made calls for, and they're usually ex-prosecutors. In fact, there happened to be an ex-prosecutor who was a great guy, and he's an African-American lawyer in Lexington, South Carolina. And I was proud to make calls and support him last year because I believed that he would have been a great judge. He didn't win. But it had nothing to do with the color of his skin. Derek's a great lawyer, a fair guy, and would have been a fantastic judge in this state. And I saw it when he worked as a prosecutor with me. And so it needs to be about merit every time, whether we're talking about judges, hiring people. We never need to look at skin color because that's essentially, I believe, racism. When you're making a decision about anything based on the color of skin and showing favorites, that flies in the face of everything Martin Luther King ever said about we need to be judging people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. But these woke left-wing policies now do the exact opposite of that. And we need to make sure we're not doing that in government. And as your Attorney General, I will fight every single DEI policy that is proposed, 100% of the time.
So this isn't my pay grade, but how are we doing on time? Do we have time for a little bloody Wagyu beef right quick? In Las Vegas, Nevada, recently a judge decided to let a guy loose, 35-time convicted criminal. He had killed people, and he was going to put him out on an ankle monitor. He had been photographed with an ankle monitor on with a gun after he'd run away from the police, saying, "They chasing me again." The Las Vegas sheriff said no. Now, in a state like South Carolina, do we have judges that would do that? And what would the role of the Attorney General be if a elected official, a sheriff, which I believe the sheriffs are the preeminent law enforcement people in any county, if the sheriff says, no, this is about public safety, we're not doing that, what is the role of the Attorney General in that particular case, Mr. Stumbo?
Well, we need judicial reform, y'all, full stop on that. That's something I've fought for since I can't even remember, 8 years. In fact, Solicitor Pascoe and I had an op-ed in the Post and Courier in 2023 about this very issue. We got to have accountability with our judges, period. Right now, they're elected 100% by the legislature. And we need to balance the Constitution here and have an executive appointment and a legislative confirmation, just like we see in Washington. And I promise you, if we had that in our state, and there was that level of accountability, the only difference in the federal system is I would bring them back every 6 years for reconfirmation. And if they had those kind of cases, you think they'd be reappointed? I would hope not, by the governor. And because typically, y'all, look, here's the problem in South Carolina. Who do you go to if you want to complain about a bad judge? Who? You got 170 members of the General Assembly that elect them. So you can go to your senator, you can go to your House member and complain about it, but they're only 2 votes out of 170. We need our governor's office on the hook if we have bad judges, just like we hold the president accountable for his judicial appointments on the federal level. So that's first and foremost. We need a constitutional amendment to get rid of the JMSC, let the governor appoint, let the legislature confirm. That is my plan for judicial reform, so we have accountability in South Carolina. Now, just on would that happen in South Carolina, I can promise you this, as a prosecutor, I would be kicking, screaming, and hollering in court all the way outside the courtroom if I had a judge let that guy out. And I can tell you, thankfully, in our circuit, one of the first cases I prosecuted when I was elected 8th Circuit Solicitor was an armed robbery case in Abbeville, South Carolina. Dwayne Starks. Dwayne Starks had been let out on bond time and time again under my predecessor. He had been tried twice for armed robbery and turned loose by a jury. So when he was arrested that third time by the Abbeville City Police Department, Dwayne Starks, in a cocky manner in the back seat, which was recorded on the in-car camera, said, "Oh, I'm going to beat it. I'll beat it again, just like I did every other time." Cocky. We took him to trial, we convicted him, and he's still in prison today. He got 25 years. And that's the kind of resolve we need in our prosecutors. Not weakness, not ones that are going to plead everything down to nothing. We need resolve. And that's the kind of resolve I've shown in the 8th Circuit for the last 14 years, and I'm ready to take that resolve to Columbia, South Carolina as your next Attorney General.
Mr. Pascoe.
Bill, if I'm your Attorney General, I'm going to back that chair, and I'm going to go knock on the Chief Justice's door if I have to in the middle of the night to make sure that person stays in jail.
I did neglect to say that is going before the Nevada Supreme Court. So.
Yeah, I would literally knock on his door. We have a really outstanding Chief Justice now that wouldn't let that happen. The one thing about me that I can promise you is that I am a fighter. And when I see an injustice, I stop it. 3 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, when a solicitor, one of our brethren, and a lawyer legislator and a judge let a murderer that I put in prison after the trial, convicted him of murder, I put him there, that they signed a secret sealed order that, in my opinion, was unlawful, letting him out of prison. That family found out about that murder, the man who murdered their son getting out of prison with an automated phone call. Nobody did anything. They went to the governor's office. Nobody would listen to them. When I found out about it, my first call was to the press. My second call was to the Department of Corrections, and to his credit, to Alan Wilson after that. And I stood in the lobby of the State House with Freedom Caucus members. And I did what no other solicitor's done. I called out the solicitor. I called out the judge. I called out the lawyer legislator. And we got that prisoner locked back up because that was the right thing to do. My point is there's always something we can do, Bill. And in that scenario that you just gave me, I would do something to make sure he stays in jail. Finally, on judicial reform, that was my baby. David will admit this. I see Jeff here. I was the first solicitor, the first public official to call for judicial reform. On January the 6th, 2022, yes, Stephen, as a Democrat, I spoke at the Greenville Republican Party, and I uttered the words, "We need judicial reform because of the corrupt way we elect our judges." That's what started the snowball. That little ripple started a tsunami where now everybody knows about the corruption that we have with lawyer legislators and the preferential treatment they get in our courtrooms. Because again, that's me. I'm a fighter, and I'm going to call it out. And we do need judicial reform, and you have got to put pressure on your state senators to get that passed. To his credit, Stephen, you are one of the sponsors of that bill, correct? Thank you. Help draft it. We have got to get that passed in the Senate. So talk to your senators and get that bill passed. We don't need a constitutional amendment to take legislators off the JMSC. Let's get that done now. Thank y'all.
Mr. Goldfinch.
Yeah, we need judicial reform. We have to have trust in our institutions, and one of the most important institutions to have trust in is the judiciary. If you don't have trust in the judiciary, well, then you're missing a huge foundational principle of freedom. So, yes, we need judicial reform. I helped draft the first judicial reform bill, which I think was 2022. I helped draft the second judicial reform. I've been asked to be the floor leader on the judicial reform. I can talk about this till the cows come home. I'm not sure that giving judicial nominations to the governor will solve all of our problems. I just don't know if that's true. All of you have, most of you in here have some idea about who you're voting for governor, right? Most of you have some idea about who you're absolutely not voting for governor, I would imagine, right? I see a lot of heads shaking. Okay, now imagine if that person, he or she, imagine if that person that you're absolutely not voting for governor gets to pick all the judges. How you feel about that? Not good, y'all. Not good. If you think that you don't have access about judges run amok when you go to your House member or your senator, imagine going to that person that you did not want for governor. How much access do you think you're going to have to the governor? That much. That much. So I'm not sure that's the real solution, y'all. That's just not a real thought-out solution. The real thought-out solution is let's do away with the appearance of impropriety, even if you don't believe there's impropriety in the system. Okay? We need to do away with the appearance of impropriety, because the appearance of impropriety degrades that very foundational trust in the system. And to your point specifically, I've got a great relationship with the Chief Justice of South Carolina, and I would do the same thing. I would go straight to that Chief Justice as the Attorney General, and we would make sure that that man stayed in jail.
Got time for one more chunk, Mr. Tate?
One more
chunk.
One more and then the 5-minute close.
Roger that. You made the reference, Mr. Pascoe, so we're gonna lead off with you. Law enforcement in the form of sheriffs. Now, it's more than one. And we referenced Chuck Wright. When sheriffs get into position, when they maneuver themselves into the position that Chuck Wright maneuvered himself into, isn't an abdication for the Attorney General to give that to the feds? Is that something that should be handled by the state Attorney General?
Yes. And I'm going to be open here, and I apologize, Micah, I know you're here, but I would not have handled the case the way it was handled if I was the Attorney General. That did not need to be a global plea. The state should have kept its charges. I'm disappointed.
Is that something that's actually within the purview of the state Attorney General?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. The state and the federal, you got dual sovereigns. Look at Murdaugh. I think that we did the right thing there. Murdaugh has federal charges on the financial, and he had state charges on the financial, and he was convicted in both state court and federal court. And there are a lot of reasons that we need to do that. But I would have handled the Chuck Wright case very, very, very differently. You want me to expand on that, or do you have a follow-up question?
No, you answered the main part about it being an application. That was all I wanted to know. Mr. Goldfinch, you keeping that in-house, or are you giving that to somebody else? You're going to give the feds something else that they don't really need to be involved in the first place?
Well, my understanding of the case is that it's not complete, right? We're not done with this thing, and,
yes,
and to my understanding, the investigation isn't complete either. And so I'm not sure that I should prejudge whether or not there's not going to be any federal crimes there, but certainly to the larger point, the Attorney General ought to try to keep everything he can in-house in order to retain control. If you believe in your people and your mission, then you should retain control of it and make sure that it goes the way you want to. If we find out that there is some federal conspiracy, interstate, across state lines,
different story.
Different story, right? And so to prejudge it now may be a little premature. But to the larger point, yeah, I think you should try to keep as much in-house as you can to retain control.
Mr. Stumbo.
I think every case is different. That case, I do know, was initiated by the federal investigators. So the FBI were the ones that went in and conducted the larger
Did they
part
have
of the
jurisdiction?
investigation. So, they do.
They do? Okay.
Yeah. So, well, obviously, and the case has been pled in court, and he's convicted. He's just awaiting sentencing right now in federal court. So he was convicted of federal crimes.
Yes, sir.
Already. So we're just in that waiting period. And the feds do that. We don't do that in state court. We do we get a conviction, we usually get sentencing done that day. Federal, for those of y'all that don't know this, federal government, they wait and they do a sentencing sometime later, and that's what's going on now. But in that particular case, the feds led the investigation, not SLED and not the local guys. And so at the end of the day, it was appropriate to be handled in federal court.
Does the state attorney general need to be asking questions of SLED and all the other localities on that, why they didn't catch that? Do they catch that kind of thing?
Right, yeah, I mean, that's a fair question.
You want to add?
That's not accurate. SLED did have an investigation. I've spoken to the SLED agents about the case, and I don't think they're very pleased about it either.
They did. They worked with the feds, though.
But
They worked in conjunction together.
And sure,
It was a team effort.
That's right, but SLED had a case.
Okay.
They had a pending
Mr. Goldfinch,
case.
do you think that the question should be asked why SLED and everybody else, why the feds came down first on this one?
Yeah, so Bill Ryan, the new sheriff of Spartanburg, has endorsed me, and he and I have talked about this case extensively. And I believe, and I can tell you that there were things that were missed, certainly. There were signs, right? When somebody is engaged in the criminal activity in such a level that he was, at such a high level that he was, there were signs that were missed, I think we could have done better on that one.
That concerns me. I'm glad you pointed that out, Stephen. That's a concern.
And just one last point on that. I do think our state and federal partners need to be working very closely together on a lot of cases. And that has not happened over the last few years until Brian Sterling, who was President Trump's appointment, took over. And now we have a great relationship with our U.S. Attorney's Office. Under the Biden U.S. Attorney's Office, there was not a lot of teamwork, and that has changed. So I'm thankful for that.
5-minute closing remarks. Mr. Goldfinch, the honor is yours, sir.
Thank y'all so much for having us tonight. I appreciate your attention, and I appreciate your willingness to vote. The folks that come out and do these kind of things are traditionally the folks that are going to get out and vote, and so that's super important, and I appreciate that very much. Whether you decide to vote for me or not, I appreciate you doing your civic duty, and it's really an honor to do this. It has been the privilege of my life to travel around South Carolina, all 46 counties now, to meet every sheriff and to interact with y'all. I would have not otherwise had the opportunity to meet folks and to go to these small little towns across the state and to get acquainted with them, and so it's been great. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about me personally, because we haven't really gotten into that. I live in Murrells Inlet with my family. My wife, Renee, and I have been married for 20 years. We've got 2 kids. I've got a daughter that's 12 and a son that's 10, and it's his baseball game, first baseball game tonight in Pawleys Island. I am with you. But he understands. He understands, and we're going to throw the ball tomorrow, hopefully. But my family is 100% supportive of this because they see how much I love the idea of serving the state of South Carolina. I don't have a family that sort of resents me traveling around the state and doing this. I have a family that tells me, go, do it. Jump in the car and go. And y'all, it makes it so much easier. Both of these guys, whether you like their politics or not, whether you like their attitude or not, whatever, whether you like the egos on this stage or not, everybody up here is working real hard to get your vote. And that's to be applauded, really. And it's to be applauded for all of you. So I just want to tell you, thank you. It would be an honor to serve you as your Attorney General. I think I've told you, I've been a prosecutor. I've been a civil and administrative lawyer suing the federal government and the state government my entire adult career. I don't think it's me, maybe it is. My entire adult career. I've also been, the 3rd division of the Attorney General. There's really 3 primary divisions of the Attorney General's office. You got the criminal, which does what you think it does, and I've done that. You've got the civil and the administrative division, which we've explained what that does. That goes and fights the agency state, right? That's one of the main things that it does, fight the agency state. 10th Amendment, federalism. That's what I do, y'all. And then you got the opinions or the legislative division. Super important division. Right now, the Attorney General has to stand, he usually hires himself a lobbyist, actually. He stands in the lobby and he waves at House members and senators and say, come over, Mr. House member, come over, Mr. Senator, will you talk to me about this bill? Let me talk to you about this bill. Maybe there's an and where there needs to be an or. Maybe this law isn't defensible in court. Maybe it's very defensible in court, okay? That's what he has to do right now is hire himself a lobbyist. Very inefficient process. Y'all, I've been blessed enough to have served in the House Republican caucus. I've been blessed enough to have served in the Senate Republican caucus. I'm serving there now. If I've got a problem with a bill, I don't hire a lobbyist, y'all. I go sit down at lunch with these guys and say, hey, have you thought about an and where there needs to be an or? Have you thought about whether or not I can defend this in court at the U.S. Supreme Court? Which I'm licensed at the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't know if these guys are. I can do that for you on day one. I can start this job on day one, not crawling, not walking, not even running. I can do it sprinting on day one. And I think that's a good investment for South Carolina, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Well, Stephen, I hate you're missing a ball game tonight because there's nothing worse. A lot of my kiddos are here today. We were in a season of life where we were at a lot of ball games, but I'm sorry you're having to miss it, but thank you for your service to our state. Y'all, that's ultimately, and I want to start with that. Usually when I go around the state, South Carolina, I show them the back of this card because it's a picture of my family. It's a picture of Vanessa and our 4 kids and our daughter-in-law, Hannah, and who's here tonight as well. And that is why I got into public service in the first place. When I was in, right after undergrad, I moved home from Toccoa Falls College where I played ball up there. That's all I thought about at the time. It was a sports-heavy thing at Toccoa Falls when I was there, played basketball and baseball. So when I finished there, I'd go home and we start a small business in Greenwood. One of the best experiences I ever had. I think it makes me a better lawyer today because I was a small businessman for 3 years before I went to law school. But the reason why I went is I had a good friend who's still one of my best friends to this day who works with Mike over in Anderson, and he was an Anderson County Sheriff's deputy. And I went up and went on a ride-along with him. His name's Mike Cox. Michael said, David, one of the most frustrating things about being in law enforcement is we make arrests, we're going and risking our lives on the streets, and we send those cases up to the courtroom, and they get squandered. The ball gets dropped time and time again. And he said, you don't know how frustrating that is. And so when I went to law school, it was with the goal of becoming a courtroom prosecutor so I could be that guy to go in court and fight for law enforcement and fight for crime victims. And so fast forward 2 stints at the Attorney General's office, and that 4 years I was in Lexington at the Solicitor's office prosecuting everything in the world, murders to rapes to child molestations. And what I heard from those 2 sheriffs and police chief was the same thing. David, here in your hometown in Greenwood and these other counties, we are struggling to get convictions. And because our Attorney General, our Solicitor at the time, my predecessor, just wasn't trying anything. And so that was why we prayed and ended up going, following the Lord's calling, going home and running for Solicitor. And so I want to leave South Carolina better for my kids and my grandkids than I found it. I can promise you over the last 14 years, I've left the 8th Circuit Solicitor's office better than I found it. And I'm not running for Attorney General because I don't like that job. I can promise you that. It is a great job. I still get to try cases regularly. Tried a guy last year who was an illegal immigrant who blew through a 4-way stop and killed a 3-year-old girl named Madison Hines in Lawrence County. He was deported under the first Trump administration, came back under Biden's open border policies, killed Madison Hines. And walking through that case with that family was one of the honors of my life. I got more out of that from them. They taught me about how to handle tragedy. I can't imagine losing a child. So I still get to do that as Circuit Solicitor today. I'm running for Attorney General because we need to take that resolve and that toughness to Columbia to fight bad guys and fight crime, and to represent you on policy issues, whether that's the life issue and defending the unborn, whether that's making sure we have elections that we can count on, whether that's the Second Amendment, whether that's parents making decisions on whether their kids get a vaccine jab in the arm, and not government bureaucrats. You need an attorney general that's going to fight those fights. And so that's why I'm going to Columbia, to represent, keep our families safe, and make sure we have liberty, life, liberty, and freedom in Columbia, that we're not trampling on the rights of parents and everyday citizens. So that's why I want to go and represent each and one of you in this room. I hope I can earn your vote between now and June the 9th. Thank you all for coming out and participating in the political process tonight. A lot of people don't do that anymore, and yet that you are to be applauded tonight for coming out and engaging in the political process. We need more of that in South Carolina. I want to take a great state and make it even greater. There's a reason why everybody's moving to South Carolina right now, and it's because we have a great quality of life here. But there's things we need to improve and get better on. Judicial reform, we've talked a lot about that tonight, and other things. But we need to keep South Carolina the greatest state in the United States of America and make it even greater. And I hope I can do that as a positive, strong leader in our party to go to Columbia and be your attorney general for all South Carolinians and fight for your families. So I'd ask for your vote on June the 9th.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for having us here. Stephen, I can't believe you actually made me feel sorry for you tonight. But seriously, thank you for your sacrifice. I mean, that's tough. That's really tough. I started having flashbacks, David. I mean, our funnest, and Stephen will tell you this too, the greatest nights of our lives are watching our kids play baseball. And one of my funnest nights was standing next to you watching our boys play football against each other. So I appreciate your service. And, you know, the bottom line is you got 3 really good people up here, at least 2 really good people and 1 disruptor, okay? But we're very different. And the Attorney General's race this year, and I mean this, is without a doubt the most important race on the ballot. Without a doubt. I love most of our gubernatorial candidates, but really on day one, what can they do other than change the drapes of the governor's mansion, right? Maybe the locks. But the Attorney General can change the culture in South Carolina, and it can change the culture and end the culture of corruption in South Carolina. And you want proof of that, of how important the AG's race is? Think of how the good old boys have tried to keep me off the ballot. Why would they be doing that if they didn't know that I could bring change and they weren't scared? More proof, if that's not enough? Think about this. Going all the way back to October, the good old boys have been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in dark money against me in a down ballot race. It's because they know that I'm going to change things in South Carolina. And I don't blame them. They just need to spend a whole lot more money, but that won't do any good. I'm not running, as I said, for Attorney General to rise to the position. I'm running for Attorney General to rise to the occasion. 3 very different candidates, good people. But if you want someone who's going to fight corruption, I am your Attorney General. I have a proven record of doing it in the past, and you know I will do it for you in the future. If you want an Attorney General that's going to protect our children better, I am your Attorney General. If you want an Attorney General who is a fighter, who has a record fighting judges, legislators, lawyers, I am your Attorney General. For too long, AG has stood for aspiring governor. I am not going to run for any other office but Attorney General. It's all I care about doing is fixing this state. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus like a laser on fixing our state. Criminal division, civil division, everything. I get phone calls every single, if not every day, certainly every week, from legislators and lobbyists to do it the right way. And the vast majority of the people up there do it the right way. And they tell me the same old thing. David, they're scared to death of you up here. Be careful. They're going to do everything they can to make sure you're not elected. They're scared of you. You know what I say? Good. They need to be. If I had an origin story, the reason I really am dedicated to running for Attorney General was, yes, I did the State House corruption probe. I saw how corrupt it is up at the State House. And I've seen how corrupt it is in every county almost in this state. Yeah, I locked up the 5, or put away, convicted and prosecuted and had removed from office and sent to prison, the chairman of the judiciary. But yeah, I had the 5 most powerful legislators in the state removed from office. I issued the state grand jury report, the Pascoe report that outlines corruption in South Carolina in 2018. But y'all, it's worse today than it was in 2018 and 2021 when I was your special prosecutor. We had a senator stand up in the South Carolina Senate, like I told you, and basically admit to a potential bribe, and nobody's doing anything about it. When is the madness going to end? When is justice going to overcome the madness of this state and the corruption in the state? It's going to stop when I'm your Attorney General. And I'm going to close by telling you this. The swamp is the State House. That's what we need to change. Now, the vast majority of the people up there are good people, but they tolerate it, and that's their sin. And when the wicked go unpunished, the just are the ones that get hurt. I live by a quote, and I'm going to end with this. This is my pledge. I live by, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, we strike a blow against justice. Well, when I'm your Attorney General, the toleration will come to an end. Thank you.
Bill, can we give all 3 of them a hand? Not one of them lives in the upstate. They're all Columbia and towards the coast. They